The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is the Warden of Grey County, Brian Milne, and it's always a pleasure to have Brian here in the I was going to say the studio, but it's not. You're in your office, and I'm in mine. So, a conversation then. Let's leave it at that.
Indeed. Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Now, before we begin, I got to ask you, how's the corn doing down in Southgate?
Corn is doing well, and as they say, corn makes whiskey. Or rain makes corn. Corn makes whiskey. There you go. So the corn's doing well.
I was noticing on my commute down to Durham earlier this week that what were bare fields have now got 6 inches, 8 inches of corn, and that's quite something.
Yeah, it's coming along. 2 or 3 weeks ago, the weather we'd had a lot of rain, and there were some people starting to get a little concerned. But anyway, I think that concern has passed now, and we're well on the way to a good crop. What looks like a good crop. Yep.
This is what I'm hearing. What I was also told was that the big thing is that with that, we had warm weather right when we needed it, thawed the ground out, so the ground itself was warm and gave the seeds a good kickstart.
Yeah, no, it did get a good start. Although I was just out in Calgary last week for the SCM conference and talking to a fellow from Manitoba. They're really struggling to get the crop in out there because they've had a tremendous amount of rain and it continues to rain. So there's always challenges, right?
Well, you can offer the proper prayers to the weather gods.
Prayers, yes, okay.
Isn't that what farmers do? They
Yeah. Some call them prayers, others call them other things. But the weather is key for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's switch it up again and move from the weather to the politics of Grey County. And I think that one of the issues that is certainly on everyone's mind across Grey County, particularly in central Grey County or the municipality of West Grey, is what's going on at the Durham Hospital. And it's been a dynamic situation. I'll grant that. I mean, your colleague, Mr. Eccles, has been very passionate, and I remember speaking to Mr. Byers before not too long ago, and he felt that things would work out. But okay, you had I gather, quite a session recently at County Council.
Yeah, we did. There's so much could be said, and so much that needs to be said. But the county, I think, has chosen to try to keep negotiations and keep the conversation going with the different stakeholders in this. And what is really frustrating, at least from our perspective as a county, is that both the board of the South Bruce Grey Health Center and the Ministry of Health absolutely refused to talk to us. I don't know whether they don't understand that, paramedic services is run by the county. Long-term care is run by the county. Huge involvement in the healthcare sector. We're big stakeholders in all of this. And yet, no, they won't talk to us. It's extremely frustrating. We can't get answers. They won't give us answers. In fact, the ministry won't even acknowledge that we sent them communications. The local MPP, Mr. Byers, has been empathetic, I'll say, but in terms of actually securing a meeting with the ministry has been less than helpful. It's really very dismaying.
Now, when we're taping this, you have a county council meeting coming up the following day, and there is a letter on the agenda from Mr. Byers, which does say, make the idea, floats the idea that the beds stay open and that conversations happen between South Bruce Grey Hospital and Hanover Hospital to try and come to some agreement. But that's is that a Hail Mary situation, or is it a distraction,
Well,
or is it
I
real?
would hope it's not a Hail Mary, although I mean, and we're not the only stakeholder in this whole thing. I mean, Hanover is a big piece of it. Grey Bruce House, or Bright Shores rather, they're a piece of this as well, because as I understand it, anecdotally, the Hanover Emerge is getting absolutely slammed because people, if they have a choice, they're bypassing the Durham Emerge and they're going straight to Hanover. And Hanover's completely overwhelmed in terms of numbers, and it's having impacts in Mount Forest, in Markdale, and even in Owen Sound. And I just wonder, was any of this thought of when the board of South Bruce Grey, did they think of any of this? Did they consider any of this? From my perspective, what I'm hearing is no, no one was consulted. It was just, this is what's going to happen. We're doing it. Suck it up. It just drives me nuts, because the county, Grey County, we pride ourselves in being collaborative with the county and any stakeholders in any service that we offer. And we do extensive consultation of any changes or budgetary items that we're doing. And yet this is how we get reciprocated. It defies logic. I don't understand. And, you know, as I've often said to anyone that'll listen, if they have a plan, talk to us. Tell us what the plan is. Maybe it's a good plan. I don't know. I have no idea. It doesn't look like it so far. But if you have a plan, maybe share it and let us know what you're doing, and maybe we can work with you then. But so far, nothing.
I can say that I have heard anecdotally that your comments about the Hanover Hospital being busy are certainly stories that I'm hearing as well.
Yep.
And I've also heard, I've been involved in this community for nearly 25 years in Grey Bruce. And one of the hallmarks of Grey Bruce, and I've been involved in healthcare governance, but not at this level. One of the hallmarks of healthcare governance has always been a collaborative, cooperative agreement. May not agree, but at least we talk to each other.
Exactly.
And I've even heard it described as the Grey Bruce solution, where we work together.
Yes, exactly. And it as you indicated, I mean, it's always been thus in the healthcare industry, and indeed many other services that the county or others provide. Let's all work together, because we're all in this together. We're not going to solve anything on our own. We need all of our partners at the table, and we can work together and work through virtually anything, I'm sure. But this strategy, and then I will say that I understand the pressures, I think, that the board, the South Bruce Grey Health Services, the board is under. Funding is woefully lacking from the Ministry of Health. I mean, I'm on a board of another healthcare alliance to the south that services part of southern Grey County, and particularly the west end of Southgate. And I truly understand the pressures they're under in terms of lack of staff, and that's all staff. It's not just docs, it's all healthcare professionals, and indeed others, administration, operations, all the levels of staff at any healthcare facility. And the ministry offers 1%, maybe 2% increases of the base funding, and yet a hospital, like any organization, is being slammed with increases of different services of 10, 15, 20% in some cases coming out of the pandemic. Something's got to give. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, I can understand why the board is under pressure. I don't understand what they've done to relieve that pressure or mitigate that pressure. Again, because, it's affecting all healthcare sectors, and we need to work together rather than just striking off on our own and saying, nope, this is what we're doing. Tough luck.
Have you had a conversation with your counterpart in Bruce County, Warden Peabody?
Yep. We've talked back and forth quite a little bit. Yes, we have.
Okay, because it strikes me as this may be one of the avenues that of work where we could work together at the political level. But hey, if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, sometimes it's hard to move.
Well, true enough. That is, yeah.
Well, speaking of long-term care, what effect will this have on the long-term care, the rebuild of not Grey Gables, Rockwood Terrace?
Well, it won't have a direct effect on the rebuilding of the new Rockwood Terrace. We're continuing on with the project. The groundbreaking is scheduled for June 28th of this year. So we're really excited to move that project forward. Where the impact for this is in the assigning of physicians to that facility, because currently those physicians, or the physician that is responsible for the facility, is based at the Durham Hospital. Now, if the Durham Hospital closes, obviously that doctor will move on, presumably to somewhere where they do have hospital privileges and so on. That makes it more difficult to have a doctor nearby, or indeed even to get a doctor to commit to looking after the facility. And further to that, if, from time to time, a resident may need to be seen at Emerge, it just means a longer time frame to move that patient to that healthcare facility. And families aren't fussy on that, obviously, and neither are the residents, I'm sure, of the long-term care facility. They want to know that Emerge Healthcare is nearby if needed.
Well, the other thing is that our hospitals have been used as, I don't like to use the term, but waiting rooms for long-term care. They're called ALC beds, or alternative level of care beds, and whether we like it or not, that's reality. That people are too ill or too incapacitated to stay at home, to live at home. But the situation is that they can't go anywhere else because they're downright unsafe or medically unstable. And there's no, excuse the expression, there's no room at the inn.
No, and that's been a long-standing issue.
Yeah.
For any hospital in the region, and indeed probably across the province. That has been a long-standing issue.
Do you think you're going to raise this at AMO?
Absolutely. We've asked for a number of delegations. I'm going to say probably half a dozen, with the broad theme of rural healthcare or rural community health. And that includes the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Long-Term Care, Rural Affairs, as it's just been reconstituted. We want to try to express to the ministers, the various ministers, that a community is not just the hospital. It's not just a paramedic station. It's all the things that communities look for. And in that vein, I've been telling anybody that'll listen to that, the province's huge push to build more houses, while commendable because we're in a housing crisis, it's not good enough just to stand up 2x4s and build houses. We need all the other pieces of a community that come behind that, whether it's healthcare, recreation, schools. There's all kinds of things that need and make up a community where people want to live. And again, this is another piece of it, right? Healthcare is a big piece of where people seek to live. Yeah.
We have to remember that Minister Thompson is still the Minister of Rural Affairs.
True enough. And so I'm hoping,
hopefully you'll get that audience.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. And because a large part of her former ministry has now been carved off into, I don't know what it's called now. I think I heard farming, agriculture, and agribusiness, something to that effect. Because that is now carved off, maybe she'll see a higher need to focus on just what I described there, the broader, what is rural Ontario? What makes up communities in rural Ontario?
And rural communities are affected deeply by every other issue that this province is affected by. We've already talked on many occasions before about development. I actually saw a very interesting statistic just today that they've actually come out with a number. I think this is the federal government has come out with provincial government has come out with a number on the cost of servicing a building lot for municipalities.
I bet it's more than $1.380 plus tax.
Try adding a 1 and 5 zeros, $100,000 per lot to provide the basic services for a whatever goes on there. Can be a multiplex, can be one house, could be townhouse, whatever. Yeah. $100,000 is the basic cost for every single lot,
and thus the need and the push for more density. And I know not everybody is real fussy on more density, but density, as a report come out there, I think it was a year or two ago, it said density is not a 4-letter word. We need to, in this country, and in fact, we've always been blessed, and still are, I would suggest, blessed with the abundance of room, abundance of land. So we've always there's more land, there's always more land. Well, as the saying goes, God ain't making any more ground. So, we need to use what we have with caution. And I think we've sprawled far enough. We're losing, a great deal of farmland every day, as the statisticians tell us. So we need to build up instead of out. And to your point of the expense of servicing each individual lot, the more people we can put on each lot, it reduces the cost per person. And that in turn reduces the amount of taxes that people pay. And I mean, it just rolls down the hill. This is just to say that it's all connected, right, David? We're all connected. It's all connected. We need to work together more so now than probably ever.
And speaking of connected, and let's bring this back to Durham again, is because you're going to be initiating a new paramedic base.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we're pretty excited about that too. The one that's there currently is, it's literally in the parking lot of the hospital. So it's woefully outdated. It's too small. And so we're pretty excited. We're working with West Grey. There's that collaborative stuff, right? We're working with West Grey. They're building a new police station, and we're building a new paramedic station adjacent to it on the same property. So the paramedics will have quite a bit more room to clean, service, and house ambulances, better quarters for the ambulance crews. And I think, yes, I know this particular paramedic station has a little bit more room in storage because it's fairly central at the south end of the county there. So that currently all the supplies for all the paramedics are housed in Owen Sound. So this will allow paramedics to resupply machines a lot faster than running to Owen Sound to get them.
And I might add, there's a pretty decent restaurant right across the street from the site. I've eaten there on many occasions.
True enough. Yes, indeed.
So I'm sure that'll help the business, but it is interesting that and to see that come up. And I thought it was very helpful to hear from the CAO of the county, Kim Wingrove, that whatever happens with Durham Hospital won't affect the paramedic base. It is going to be there because that's the place for it. I understand. Absolutely.
It needs to be there. Geography tells us it needs to be there, but there will be an impact to paramedics because if they have to transport a patient further, Hanover's 10 minutes, Mount Forest is 15, Markdale, whatever, It takes them longer to do that cycle to get back to the base. So we're probably faced with upstaffing, and, we're working on 50-cent dollars because the province pays for half of paramedic services, or that's the theory. We're going to need more crews, more ambulances, but the paramedic base itself, the new one in Durham, absolutely is going ahead and will be welcomed, I'm sure, by the paramedic crews.
When do you expect ground to be broken?
I'm still hopeful that we'll get something underway this year, but we haven't been updated exactly because we now own the land. We bought the land from West Grey. All the studies and all the environmental stuff has been done on the site. So I believe the roads and the underground infrastructure are going to be installed this summer. So I'm hopeful we can break ground this fall, but we'll see.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because there are 2 subdivisions just to the west of the new paramedic station, and I'm sure they'll at some point they'll be digging too. So hey, there'll be a lot of dirt moving in Durham.
Absolutely. And you know what? You mentioned the new subdivisions. I mean, isn't it ironic that we're welcoming more and more and more people to our area, and yet we're supposed to deal with fewer and fewer and fewer healthcare resources? I don't understand the logic of any of this.
Very true. Very true. It just, there's a disconnect here, and I can't make much sense of it, but we'll see. But
hey, we're getting a new highway somewhere down south of us, so whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Which kind of leads me to, now I'm going to ask you a really risky question as a politician, but I'll ask it anyway. We're starting to hear the drums of the election drums starting to tap. You think we'll be talking election by the time we get back in the fall, or are we looking at a year from now, or are we looking at? Do you think the premier will hold out until 2026 or 26?
My prediction and my answer to that question would be next spring.
Mm-hmm.
Next spring. Again, at the FCM conference, there was some talk about that, although it was primarily federal stuff at that particular conference. But there was some talk about what Mr. Ford might do, and the consensus seemed to be next spring, because he wants enough runway to pronounce on some of the promises that he's made in the past, and we've seen some of that in the last few weeks. But I think he needs that winter runway to really fill up that jar of promises with job done, and then next spring pull the pin, because he wants to go to the polls before Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Trudeau duke it out.
Right. That seems to be the consensus of the experts as well. He wants to have a solid majority if he can win it. For the polls seem to suggest that before the next federal election. So.
Yeah. That wasn't so much of a dangerous question. I mean, there's lots of. I'm no expert, but there's lots of consensus around that.
Well, I'm asking you to go out on a limb what you're saying, and I think you're in good company. You're in good company. Sure. It'll be absolutely fascinating to watch for a whole bunch of reasons, and we shall see what we shall see. It's. Yep. If there's one thing that is absolutely sure, it is that the politics at every level in Bruce Grey Owen Sound and in Huron-Bruce are interesting. Always. Now, speaking of subdivisions and such, what the heck is going on down in Durham or in Dundalk? Are your houses still reproducing like rabbits or something?
Well, they've kind of tapered off from, we had a high in, I think it was 2022. We had a high of just around 500 new homes built. So it's tapered off to about half that, but that's still 250 new homes a year, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. I mean, even as recent as 5 or 6 years ago, we were building less than 100. Across the whole township, never mind in Dundalk. And so, we've seen a big influx of new people and new houses. I think probably now, we've seen an indication that I believe that was last Wednesday, the Bank of Canada dropped the interest rates a quarter point. And if interest rates still keep coming down, I think you'll see maybe those numbers creep up again because, people are watching those interest rates as to what it'll cost them if they, when they acquire a mortgage. So, building's still going apace, and it's exciting. But it comes with lots of challenges, like everything else, trying to keep up with that growth. That's for sure.
Now, the people who buy these homes in Dundalk, they're commuters, I presume.
Most of them are. Well, I'll say a lot of them are. A lot of them are for sure. But it surprises me, actually, to know the number of people that still work from home. There's lots of people that aren't going into the office anymore. They're working exclusively from home, or, at the most, maybe 1 or 2 days going into the office. So there's a lot of people that work from home, which, commuters create their own challenges. We don't necessarily want to become a bedroom community, but it at this point, it almost points to that. That's for sure.
So it's possible that you'll be more like Shelburne.
Maybe. Maybe.
I didn't mean to insult you. I didn't.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, and that's not how I took it at all. I just, Shelburne has their own, they're pretty well stopped developing now because they've run out of wastewater capacity. Fortunately, we still have a fair bit of capacity that way. We have all kinds of water because, just geography again, Dundalk is blessed with a lot of good water underground. But as all those new people come to town, they have expectations of what should be available, right? And again, it goes back to this whole notion of, you got a new house, but where's the walk-in clinic? Where's the new grocery store? Where's the new school? And it just goes on and on and on, which leads me into the announcement from about a week and a half ago. We had the Minister of Education here, Minister Lecce, and he announced a new $28 million school for Dundalk, which we're extremely thankful for because I believe I may have mentioned on this show before, the two schools that are currently in Dundalk are woefully oversubscribed. They're both about 150% over capacity. I think there's 4 portables at each one of them, and there's going to be more this fall because it's going to take a minimum of 2 years to get the new school built. But one of the real fortunate pieces, and timing's everything, right? Well, in a lot of things, and this new school is no different. Up until this school build, the ministry was very hard on the fact that, we're going to build a new school, but it's based on what you need today. And never mind, school isn't going to open for 2 more years, and the community continues to grow. This time around, the ministry has kind of broken that mold and said, we recognize that Dundalk is growing almost exponentially. So we're going to build in a growth factor here. So the new school will actually have, I think it's 735 new pupil spaces, and there'll be 54 daycare spaces in the school as well, which they're needed badly as well. So, the crystal ball for the future is always just that, a crystal ball. Nobody knows for certain, but we do know fairly certainly that the growth is going to continue. So we're hopeful that the growth in that increased number of school spaces will, meet in the middle in the 2 or 3 years in the future when the school opens.
Well, that's great, Brian. Well, my producer is telling me, or a director is telling me, we need to take a break. So we will, and we'll be back in about 90 seconds. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking, and we'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Here at 3 reasons why your social strategies should include Rogers TV. Reason number 1 is we have hyper-local audiences. The community TV channel gives you a chance to engage with people where you live, so you really get to know your neighbors and they get to know you. Reason number 2 is we can help diversify your distribution. With social media, it's really important to be able to have a wider audience, and Rogers TV can actually help complement your online presence by delivering to a different audience. And it's actually really easy to repurpose your existing content or to just create new material specifically tailored for community TV. And finally, reason number 3 is we can help enhance your credibility and your trust. And by aligning your brand with Rogers TV, you can tap into that trust that viewers have. This can boost your reputation, especially among viewers who favor local businesses and value community involvement. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy to build your local audience with Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Warden Brian Milne of Grey County. And I have to confess, he teased me in the break because he said, I've got a story about the Prime Minister. And I said, hold it. Let's wait till you get back. Okay, Brian, where were you? What happened? What's the juice here?
Well, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but you set me up pretty good there, I tell you. Again, as I said earlier, I was at the FCM conference, which is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and it was in Calgary this year in Alberta. Calgary is a wonderful city. I love it. I've been there a few times, and it's always a very hospitable place to be. But one of the keynote speakers was the Prime Minister. He always makes a point. He's been coming to every FCM conference since, I believe, 2015, in there somewhere. So this year on the agenda, he's got about, I think it was 40 minutes for Prime Minister to speak. So the room's jammed, standing, the place is full. So the Prime Minister comes out, he speaks for maybe between 5 and 10 minutes, very briefly. And then he sits down with, I think it was Mayor Savage from the city of Halifax. He's the moderator, and the Prime Minister is going to take questions from the floor. Immediately, the 2 microphones, there's like 30 people at each microphone. First question, something to do with the carbon tax. And, there's a few chirps, a few jeers, but the Prime Minister, and I have to admit that when he first was elected, a leader of the party, I thought, maybe he talks a good story. So, all right, let's see what he can do. But I've kind of soured a little bit on him lately, but anyway, whatever. Boy, he come out swinging. He is a scrapper. He said, wait. I'm going to answer this question. And he did. He answered every question for almost half an hour. There was 2 guys from Alberta to my right and 2 from the left, and they were fairly big guys. I presume they were farmers. I don't know. I thought, could get a little loud in this section, but actually, one of them applauded one of Trudeau's answers. So Trudeau, he elicits a fairly strong reaction from most people these days.
Yes.
And as I said, I've kind of soured on him lately, or my enthusiasm has diminished. But he is my Prime Minister, and I'll say that he did pretty good. He did pretty good in that forum, and I'm told that he just loves those forums. He loves to answer those kinds of questions, and the questions were all over the place. There were carbon tax, the Grassy Narrows thing with the mercury, diversity questions. There was a wide breadth of. We could have been there all day, and he was ready to go all day. The organizer said, "No, we gotta move on." But he did very well.
Well, it's interesting you would say that, because we are often, our opinions are filtered by those 15-second question period speeches, which really all they do is those are sound bites, which really don't convey the substance of some of the issues. And it doesn't. I don't think it really matters whether it's Mr. Trudeau or Mr. Singh or Mr. Poilievre. They all have a perspective,
Absolutely.
and they deserve at least the courtesy of a hearing.
Yes,
And,
exactly. And like I said, the crowd was very well. I mean, there was the odd chirping here and there, but the crowd was very good. Everybody listened. Everybody was respectful. Elizabeth May spoke later in the day. Jagmeet Singh, he spoke. Mr. Poilievre was supposed to be there, but Scott Aitchison, I believe, he was there in Mr. Poilievre's stead. So, I mean, they all did very well. They're all seasoned politicians. They all know the crowd. So it's always a highlight for me to hear the political keynotes at any of these events, because you're right, David. The sound bites, as somebody told me, Parliament, indeed, council, local council. To a large degree, that's theater. The real politics takes place out in the community. And it's as I said, it's those speeches are always a highlight for me.
So are you going to go to AMO with equal enthusiasm?
Yes. Yes, because what we talked about earlier about the possibility of an election next spring, I think the current provincial government here in Ontario will be very, very well incentivized to be available and to be heard at the AMO conference, because it's the biggest municipal conference in Ontario, most widely attended. And so I think there'll be a great expectation. Mr. Ford always does a good job, speaking of politicians speaking, he always does a good job of speaking to the conference. I don't think he's missed any in recent memory, but we'll see what all the members of the different parties have to say, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, it's always interesting to watch and listen to the speeches, because you never know what bon mots, as they say in French, or good words that get dropped.
Absolutely.
It's not as subtle as the raising of an eyebrow, perhaps,
or a half grin. Yeah,
or a half grin.
True.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly. Someone asks a question and you get a half smirk, so you know what the answer is.
Well, yeah.
Well, let's shift over a little bit and talk about energy, because there's been some discussion recently. First of all, the pumped energy storage at Meaford has been on the county council agenda. And what has county council said?
County council has I'll say, conditional support for the project. Now, some are identifying that, and mistakenly so, to say that the county has approved the project. County has zero approval authority for that project, none. All we've indicated is that if this list of conditions, and it's quite a list, please don't ask me to recite it because I'll never remember, but if these conditions, and I'll say the primary one is, of course, that SON is agreeable, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is agreeable to the project, because that is key. And TC Energy has made it very clear that SON must agree to the project, otherwise the project doesn't go ahead. But the county itself formally has give conditional support to the project. And quite personally, it doesn't really matter what source the energy is. They all have an impact on our communities, whether it's environmental, socially, financially, whatever. And from what I can see so far, and I've had different discussions with people from TC Energy, and indeed Meaford and the community over there, this one is probably as minimal impact as any could be, given the benefits of the increased energy availability that this project will construct. So that's in a nutshell. That's where the county's at with that project.
Sure. Well, there's another project that was there are a number of actually that have been proposed, but and one that was approved over in Bruce County, and that's a battery energy storage system. And I know when I interviewed Warden Peacock that there are concerns about those battery systems because they have, if they run away, you've got a huge fire issue and support issue and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we're not, Grey County, the ones that were proposed for Grey County did not get approval. Is that correct?
Well, they didn't get support resolutions. Again, the local municipalities and indeed the county, we don't have approval authority, but we can give our support. You've probably heard the term the willing host letter. Yeah. So the legislation, and there's the old Green Energy Act under the previous Kathleen Wynne government, had a number of things in there that these big projects didn't need a willing host letter from the local municipality. Well, that's changed under the current government. They now don't need a willing host letter, but if they do get a willing host letter, that checks another box and gives them a few more points for their proposal. My understanding is that, and indeed in Southgate, we had firsthand knowledge of this. One of the companies came and made a proposal to Southgate for a project. And again, there was questions about safety, fire, the amount of land it was going to use up, that kind of thing. We just said, no, we're still an unwilling host to this type of project. Now, I just heard this morning that one of the proponents, and it's not the one in Southgate, but one of the different projects that was proposed in Grey County is going to try to proceed, even though they did not get a willing host letter from the municipality. So again, I would suspect they'd have a tough time with the approval agency, which is the IESO, to get a contract without a local letter of support.
I know that there was one proposed just outside of Owen Sound, in Meaford.
Yeah,
and there have been concerns expressed at Owen Sound Council and I think Meaford, but it's.
I think it was being proposed for just at the south edge of Owen Sound here, like just
that's right, right south of Superior Street, which is actually in the town of Meaford.
Right. So whether that's the project that thinks they're going to try to proceed, I don't know that part.
I don't know either, but that's the only one that comes to mind because the rest there was one down near Ayton, I believe.
Yeah.
In the south end. And then there was the one in Aaron Eldersley, and there were the three. I believe there were the three, and there could have been a fourth. But it was the Aaron Eldersley one that got approved by the IESO.
Right.
So, well, if nothing else, it provides us with more conversation.
Well, we need the power, right? We need the capacity. I get that. But I think at the end of the day, we're just nibbling at the edges of what the demand could be if things keep going in the same trajectory we're on now. I was over to Bruce Power last summer for the announcement where they're going to, try to build a Bruce C over there. We need that base load power, or will need it, and it's going to take time to build that new nuclear plant. There's lots of debate whether that's the proper way to go or not, but we'll see.
Yes, indeed. And we haven't even had a conversation yet about the DGR.
No, and that's ongoing.
That is, but again, that's another project that requires SON approval.
Another piece of the project, or piece of the puzzle. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, there's lots of people that don't think it's responsible to be building yet more nuclear capacity until we solve that riddle. And that's a big one. Absolutely. And it's quite rightly that SON is such a big stakeholder with approval authority there for that project as well. Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. Actually, it was Warden Peabody who mentioned that he will be proposing that at the Welcome to Bruce County signs, he is going to propose that they acknowledge that that the territory of Bruce County is within Saugeen Ojibwe Nation territory.
I think that's a wonderful idea. This is the first I've heard of it, but I think that's a perfect idea.
Next
If you
time you
don't
talk,
mind, I'm going to speak to my staff about that after this to see. I think that's a great idea.
well, it's one of those things that costs very little other than signs, which aren't
Well,
cheap.
No,
But
you're
at
absolutely
the same
right.
time, it's a gesture of reconciliation, more than
Absolutely.
a gesture. It's a recognition.
Absolutely it is. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
So, well, I mean, yeah, Warden Peabody was quite enthusiastic about it. So, and I'm sure you will see Warden Peabody at some point in the near future.
Actually, I'll probably see him. What's today? Today's Wednesday. I'll see him next week at an event, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. I really do. I think that's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. 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 Hey, every municipality could do that.
They absolutely could. They absolutely could. Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting things, I'm going to go into the weeds a bit. At a recent county council meeting, there was a report from the planning staff about Bill 185 and the new proposed provincial planning statement, which are, let's face it, the rules by which stuff gets developed, property gets developed, and so on. There seemed to be, and it's a complex document, and I confess I'm not a planner, so I don't know. There was the good, the bad, and the ugly. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Planning is probably 95% art and 5% fact, because just the very nature of every piece of land is different from the one beside it, and its owners are different than the ones that are owning the piece beside. There's a lot of art involved in planning. So, you know, I won't venture to make a broad statement about Bill 185, but I think we can see in broad strokes that the province did hear some of the concerns from the municipalities concerning the draft of that particular bill. Because there was some things in there that, well, I mean, even the one, there's been so many and I'll probably get it wrong, but I think even the notion that every farm should have the ability to sever 3 lots off by right, just where did that come from? I mean, it just makes no sense and doesn't make any sense. And so they pulled back on that one, thankfully. So, but we'll work with anything that the province sends us. Doesn't mean we'll be happy, but we'll work with anything. And we have. Yeah.
I thought one of the interesting things, and this is really in the weeds, was that they discussed the issue of bonusing, which is, and what that is is allowing municipalities to offer advantages to industries, to developers, to come and visit us. It's very popular in the U.S. and very common in the U.S. But there's an up and a downside to that, because basically, if I read the statement right, you end up eating your neighbor's lunch.
Yeah. And it becomes very us and them. And we saw a little bit of that going back to the healthcare industry. Not that many years ago, municipalities were literally bidding on doctors. If you come to our municipality, we'll give you 10,000, 100,000. We'll give you a free house. We'll give you whatever almost. And it just got to the point where it was absolutely stupid what some municipalities were offering to get a new doc to come. The doc would come, and then when their contract was up, well, all the way across the fence, they're offering more money than you are. I'm going over there now. Now the original municipality is right back where they started. Now, if you're going to bonus industry, they're not as likely to just up stakes and leave, but still, it makes it very difficult for a small, from a financial standpoint, municipality to compete with the likes of, Brampton or Vaughan or, those kinds of places, because they've got extremely deep pockets and huge amount of tax resources to work with. And anyway, I wouldn't want to see it happen.
Well, I'm and this is a true story. Many years ago, when I lived in New Brunswick, one of the big drivers of the provincial economies in the Atlantic provinces is what used to be called the federal government pot, and I won't go into all of those. It doesn't matter who was in power.
No.
But the point was that the government was bonusing industries to come into a town and develop some industry and provide jobs, and look at how good we are. And I lived in a small community of about 2,500 people. Okay, Dundalk. Let's use Dundalk as Dundalk size.
Yep.
And there was this company that came in to make wax logs, and they had a nice plant, had a lovely plant. They had 30 odd jobs, and 3 years after opening, one day, the employees showed up for work and the place was shuttered. What happened was that the federal grant money had finished. The owners had come in, packed up the plant over a weekend, taken it down to Scarborough and put it back in business in Scarborough. And I saw those very same logs for sale in grocery stores here in Ontario. Same brand, same labels, but instead of made in New Brunswick, made in Ontario. That's bonusing, because they would use those grants to, and it left some really bad feelings in the community.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cucumbers in greenhouses in almost the Arctic comes to mind. Brooklyn cars comes to mind. I mean, it just, there's legions of examples where, I'm not sure that was the best use of government dollars.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter which government it was.
No. Every government has done the same thing over time. Yeah. Except the government of Grey County. We've never done that. I can say that with 100% certainty.
Okay, well, as long as your nose is clean, Brian, you're good.
Yeah, I hope a staff person doesn't come to me and say, "Oh, by the way, no, that."
Well, and let's remember, you're 2 years out from municipal elections, so
that's right.
You're not on the hustings yet.
Nope, not yet. Although some would suggest that every day in politics is a day of campaigning.
There is that school of thought, isn't there? There is. So what's your summer going to look like?
Well, I'm hoping to get at the hay in here shortly, to be honest. I hope the weather comes around. I'm getting a little tired of these rainstorms every 3-4 days. Always busy on the farm, but lots of events to go to. I'm looking forward to, there's a multicultural event at Grey Roots on the 22nd of June. Oh gosh, I don't know. You shifted gears so fast there. My mind didn't shift fast enough, but there's lots of things going on, and I'm excited to take in as many of them as I can. Yeah.
I mean, this is the season of getting out and seeing your neighbors and meeting people, barbecues, fairs, those kinds of things, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And traditionally families have used the summer to, explore their own region, right? Because the weather's nicer. In the wintertime, people tend to go south, far south, and that doesn't do any of us any good here in Ontario. But we have so many things in our own backyard here that I think people, if they took the time to really seek out those opportunities, they'd be amazed at how much there is to see and do. I used to actually hear that a fair little bit when I was still driving motor coach years ago. People would say, why are we going to Florida when we've got so many things in our own municipalities to see and do here in Ontario? And I think the pandemic has, if there's any good to come out of the pandemic, that would be one of the things that I think people are seeking out things closer to home, maybe a little more economical in terms of travel. And I think it's going to be a great summer.
Well, when you think about it, we've got Grey Roots, which is worth a day right there.
Absolutely.
Particularly in the summer with Morstan Village open.
Yep.
We've got waterfalls galore. If
Yep.
you haven't done the waterfall tour, that's always interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Bruce Trail if you're a hiker. There are beaches. There are various events that go on. I know here in Owen Sound, Mayor Boddy, just off the top of his head, had about half a dozen things that are going on. Continue.
Yeah, and
I'm
even
sure that's true across the rest of Grey County.
even something as simple as driving, pick a municipality, the town of Meaford. Drive to Meaford, park downtown, and just walk up and down the main street. It's amazing the little shops and stores that you can find in any small town in Ontario, but Meaford's just a prime example. Beautiful waterfront walkway, Blue Mountains. There's always stuff going on up there at the village. Even in Owen Sound, the downtown harbor, if one of the Lakers comes in to unload grain or whatever, you'll never get closer to that kind of industrial activity than you will in the port of Owen Sound. It amazes, I think, a lot of people that we actually have a port, an industrial port here right in Owen Sound, and it's right there. It's pretty cool.
It is, and it's an interesting way to spend the summer. And even the drive from around through Georgian Bluffs from Owen Sound over to Wyerton along Grey Road 1 is
but don't take your eyes off the road, because that road it's a busy road in the summertime, and you don't want to. I know. I've driven it many times. But there's all kinds of things to see. And okay, you end up in Bruce County, but yeah, you don't have to.
It's a good drive. So there's lots of things to do.
Absolutely. I'm going to be at Big Bay on July 1st.
Wonderful.
I always look forward to the sunrise. Well, actually, it's not strictly a sunrise event, but the Canada Day event, the pancake breakfast, that's always a big event. I always enjoy that one.
Gee, I thought you'd be going to Big Bay for the ice cream.
I've done that too, but not that day.
Well, Brian, we're just about out of time, so I wanted to thank you for being a part of Politically Speaking today. We're coming to the end of our season, so we will see you in the fall, and I'm sure we'll have more to talk about. Thank you.
I'm sure we will. Thank you very much, David. As I said, it's always a pleasure to chat.
And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again. And we're clear.
Well, thank you.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
You don't win it to keep it, you win it to be a part of its history. Always always hard to see the difference between winning and losing.